Warning, this is not a podcast for those who have got it together. We are men seeking answers to the questions that have plagued our mind. Can we be undefeated?
And then people ask, why in the world would you want to start a nonprofit? Well, back then we never thought about it. It wasn't even a glimmer of an idea at that point. But Memorial Day of 2021 kind of changed our attitude about that. I got a phone call from the Winkler County Hospital. It was on my caller ID, and my heart sank. I just knew. I can't even explain. I just knew. He told me that Daryl had shot himself, and that I asked what his condition was, and he said that when he left there, airlifted to the trauma center in Lubbock, that he was alive. But by the time we got to Lubbock, I really didn't think he would be living. Mm-hmm. And we kept it together long enough for the conversation with the surgeons telling me that his condition was grave. They attempted surgery, and he was bleeding so profusely they had to stop. Mm-hmm. They told me he lost his eyes. So all these things were going in my head, and that we didn't get to see him for 4 hours. I made the call to you, and I was worried about you driving because I know you were pretty upset. Mm-hmm. And I was worried about you trying to get to Lubbock at that time. But when you got to Lubbock, a kind of sense of calm came over me. I can't really explain. I think it was because I knew you loved him. Mm-hmm. And it just gave a calmness to me for the three of us together to be there. And when the girls arrived, and then Ethan later on, Brianna having to make that decision was a tough time. But that's when we kind of started talking about, while we were in the hospital, you and I, and you and Brianna Zoe, our first podcast, y'all kind of touched on this. You and I touched on this. But I feel like that as a mother losing 2 sons to suicide, I don't think God purposely, I can't explain how my thought process is on this, but not that I believe that the Lord took 2 sons from me, mm-hmm. but I do believe the life that we've gone through gave me a voice to prevent maybe doing one small thing for someone else. Mm-hmm. I think that's my goal through Evil and Less, is I don't want mother to have to go through this. No. And a family and kids, and their kids to lose their daddy. And, that's just devastating for these kids. They're adults now. Ethan's 12. Mm-hmm. I really believe that this is going to affect him for the rest of their life.
For sure.
And, so it's we just don't want that to happen for anybody else. Mm-hmm. So, we all kind of, you took pictures while he was in a hospital bed. We took pictures. And as a family, we decided that seeing this, who would want to die by suicide, commit suicide, if they thought or they saw the family going through this, mm-hmm. the devastation. Right. So that's when we decided to start Evil and Less. And I was ready to start it right then. I really was. You and I talked about it. And it's about God's timing. It was not about what Debby wanted. It wasn't what Burl wanted. Yeah, it took 2 years, but that's because God had it set for 2 years. I think we had to get through the grieving, mm-hmm. the intense grieving, before we could even go down that road. Yeah. So here we are.
Yeah, I think there's so much truth to that, because personally, I had to get to that point where I could, and I know now, I didn't understand it completely then, but it's like I had to get to the point of healing myself, before I could really think about, something else. And I asked you this on the first podcast, which was really, I think a lot of people look at you and like, how in the world is this woman, not bitter? I have people ask me this frequently.
Yeah.
How is she not bitter? How is she not this hateful woman? Because if you're a parent, you absolutely that's the worst thing in the world, losing your kids in your mind, and yet, they look at you and they don't see that bitterness and that just hate, resentment toward God and, and all that. I've had things happen in my life where I got very discouraged with God, so I can understand that. And I realized something lately, and I want to know, and I wanted to ask you if it's true, because what my answer is normally when people say that or ask me about that, I say two things. I say faith. I feel like that, you are a woman of faith, and, I've known that my whole life, and you've, portrayed that, and you lived the real deal, I believe. And so that's my one answer. And then my second answer is something we talked about a little bit earlier, which was Reuben. I believe that Reuben had a big impact in your healing, and again, I believe that God
does.
He put Reuben in your life, at the perfect time. And then on top of that, Reuben is, for people that don't know, this is my opinion, but Reuben is like the polar opposite of, Uncle Larry,
Absolutely was.
to me, he is. And I've told you this before, Daryl and I used to jokingly laugh because Reuben is a very, quiet person. He's he seems like, and it was us joking, but it was more like Reuben seems like he'll do whatever he wants for you, whatever you want, He's just like, I'll do whatever. And we kind of laughed about that, but we laughed about it in a real sense that we knew that there's some truth for that in our own lives, so that we needed to be servants more to our wives, or, what I mean? In other words, there's this truth there too, that this is a picture of what a good husband looks like,
Yeah.
But on the same point, it's not what the world will tell you, that, men need to be, never vulnerable and never weak, and you realize that. And so anyway, I tell them that I think Reuben was a big part of that.
He was.
Something recently, and this is what I want to ask you about, is basically the idea is that people that are in your situation, they really want to see that other people are grateful for what they have. And what I mean by that, I think that you absolutely, for example, somebody might be scared to show you a picture of their kid because they're afraid that it might bring up bad stuff for you, that you're, but what I've realized in your situation is actually that would be the opposite of the truth. You would actually be really grateful to see a picture of my kids, for example, because I think it shows what you really appreciate is people that are grateful for what they have. And I think that when I think about when you see parents that are grateful for their kids, I think that actually is a really good thing for you, because then they might understand the grieving that you went through because you were grateful for your kids, Yeah. And so I feel like that. I don't know if that's completely true, but I think that that part of that amazing, thing that's been done in your life is that you realize what's been lost. And the only way you can realize what's been lost is to see the gratefulness of what you had.
Yeah.
And I think that when you see other people being grateful what they have, like their kids are alive, their kids are, and they're grateful for it, that makes you happy to see they're grateful.
Yeah, it does. It does. And a lot of people don't want to say the word suicide to me. Tell me a story, or did you hear about so and so? They don't want to tell me stories about that because the word suicide.
Yeah.
But suicide is a way of life. That's what we're trying to do, is get people away from that choice. We're not going to, like you said, we're not going to get them. We're not going to make an impact on every person. You had commented in the first podcast that you're not so naive as to think that you're going to completely take it completely out of the equation. We're not going to be that kind of, we're not going to be able to do that. As hard as, that sounds, we just can't. But like our name, even if one less family, even if one less person, that's our goal.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of people here that I work with that have told me, how do you do it? I can't explain it, because if someone doesn't have a relationship, I can't imagine anyone going through anything like this without having the Lord, having the Lord walk them through it. I just can't imagine. And I know of some that are not believers. One person comes to mind, I don't mention names, but one person comes to mind years ago, lost his son to he was skateboarding and a car accident hit him, it killed his son. And that man is so bitter, even 15, 20 years later. His son was 12, it was an awful accident, God bless the driver was just devastated, and the driver was actually charged for, they were sober, it was dark, the kid had no business being on the road. I can't remember what the driver was charged for, but they did serve a little bit of time. But it was an accident, and those accidents are going to happen. And you have to think about the driver, sometimes intentionally, if it's an intentional, or they're drinking, or they're, somehow, not in the right minds when they're driving or whatever. But, that man is so bitter. A pastor tried to visit with him, and he said, "No, I don't want any part of your God."
Mm-hmm.
And, oh my goodness, that just breaks my heart, because that's someone that's not a believer, and that's someone that, that is walking straight to hell. He's walking a line in that direction. It just breaks my heart. So, don't be afraid to talk to me about these kinds of things. I may not have a resolution, but I certainly can listen. I can, give you my love, my prayers, and my compassion. Those stories do exist.
Why do you think that? And I mean, maybe you went through a little bit of it, but why do you think that you did not grow bitter? And like, another way to say it, I just listened to a friend recently who he lost his job with the church as a youth minister, and it just crushed him. And so that was maybe 10 years ago. And really, he has been just super disappointed with God. And he wouldn't say that. I just pick it up that he's just doesn't want anything to do with church anymore. Doesn't want anything to do with any of that.
Well, I was almost at that point, when I was at that point in the hospital before Daryl, we disconnected life support during that waiting time of 3, 4, 5 days. I was so angry at God. How in the world can you put me through all of this? I try to serve you. I try to do my best. I'm active in the church. I'm in the choir. I play the piano. There's so much I do for you. When I asked you to take care of my son because I knew he was struggling, why didn't you take care of him? But God gives us so many little things to get us past, or me to get past that. The first thing was, and I've said this before, I was in the chapel and there at the hospital, and I was by myself, and I was just really just vocal about, why, God, why are you doing this? Or, where is a miracle? We need a miracle now, and then it's the time 9-year-old grandson walks in and sits down beside me, and he says, "So what do we do?" And he was asking me what we do at this point. Mm. And I'm sure he heard me mouth to God. And of course, I was crying, very, very sobbing uncontrollably. But just to hear that small voice ask, "What do we do?" and to be able to teach a 9-year-old how to pray, God used that instance. God used that time to heal even before Daryl died. Mm. And I can still remember the Holy Spirit just encompassing me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next few days, God just, everything in every line, God took care of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, he didn't give my son back to me, but I will see my son again.
Yeah.
I will see both of my sons again.
Mm-hmm.
And I find peace in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's powerful. And I think that that's part of the reason why we wanted to talk, today, is that I think people need to hear that, because sometimes when you're in the midst of grieving, or in the midst of things, life struggles, whatever, you just can't see the forest through the trees. You can't see it, and to hear it from somebody else's mouth, and be able to, like you were talking about at that moment before that in the church, it's like, you just can't see it. I remember those days, and I couldn't see it either. I could not see, any of it. And I think it's just so and I think it's crazy vulnerable to be able to just say, and it's so true. It's like, if anybody in this world, I think in the worldview, that this wouldn't happen to, it'd be a person like you, because of, your faith. And that's just not how it works. It's just not how it works.
Well, bad things happen to good people too, no matter how you want to, I don't idolize yourself. I try not to do that. And, and in some ways I'm proud that that's not really the right word. Yeah, I'm proud that I can display, what God's done for us, how God has carried us through this. And I think my cats are fixing to get into a fight. So I think we have to cut this pretty close. They're hissing at one another now.
I want to ask you this. I want to make sure I ask you this. So,
Okay.
and I mentioned this to you, so I gave you a little warning. But, it's really dawned on me lately. I put something in my notes, and you're going to have to forgive what I put in my notes, because I don't know. It's like me thinking, or, whatever. And I put in my notes that nobody in our family can die next besides you. And what I mean by that is, like, everybody's younger, nobody, and
I'm first in line is what you're saying.
well, and, I told you, like, obviously I hope and pray you have 20 more years, but I want to make sure that, this organization was started because of, what happened. And, us wanting to make a difference, us wanting to show people hope, us wanting to, really we've opened ourselves up. I was telling Stacy this earlier, that, by us doing this, we've opened ourselves up. And I heard this term used whenever this term was used, like a vulnerability hangover. So whenever we did our event here in Elk City, and after I got through talking, for the next day or two, that's the best way to describe it, I had this vulnerability hangover. And it's where you question everything you said.
I did.
You worry that you said too much. You worry you didn't say enough, and I had it. And what I feel like that God was constantly reminding me of is that he wants us to be vulnerable, and he wants us to not hold back. And he wants that's what I believe God was reminding me of. And, I really want to hear from you what you hope the legacy of this organization is, that when you're dead and gone, that what do you hope the legacy, because I believe this is your legacy. I really do believe that. I think that I've been, like, me being a part of it is, just a gift. And I'm very thankful for that gift. And I take it seriously. I take it very seriously. But, this isn't going to be my legacy. This is going to be yours. And, I'm curious what you hope that legacy looks like.
Well, I feel like, when you're talking legacy, I feel like you're talking about someone else, because it's hard to imagine myself, being a part of a legacy. But I want it to continue.
Yeah.
I want, I would think that if it doesn't continue, then we've gone through all this for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I want my story to be told over and over, if need be. If, I'm very quick, and maybe Ruben gets a little bit, I don't know, hesitant about my vocalizing our organization. We meet someone and we get in a conversation, and I don't just blurt out, my story to them, but I'm real quick to tell them, that we started a nonprofit, that, I have a card on, and people are so accepting of that. We were getting our nails done or our pedicures, and a lady brought up suicide. And I quickly told her, she saw my butterfly tattoos that I got in honor of Justin and Daryl. I don't have tattoos. That's the only one I have. And I will never have another one. That's Daryl and Justin. It represents them. But I want that to continue. I don't want to stop. Oh, well, Debbie died, so I guess we can just go about our merry way. I don't want that. If it takes more of the family to come get involved in it, that's what I want to happen. I want this to continue.
Wow.
50 years from now, I want even one less to be a very well-known resource to reach out to keep from going through this stuff.
I agree.
I'm very proud as president where you've taken this.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I've said it before, and you've been a huge inspiration to me. You're very important in my life, and I couldn't.
Well, you are to me.
How I can't, verbalize like how much you've taught me. And there's this country song that it's like it basically it says that the woman who believed in me. And it's talking about this, whether it's his mother or his wife or whatever, but it's like, you've been a person in my life that's always believed in me. And in so many different aspects. And really whenever, I think this is like, if I could share anything and like hope to pass on anything about that, is that even whenever I didn't deserve it, you know what I mean? It's like you saw something that other people didn't see, that I didn't see myself. And that feels, for a long time before Daryl died, before Justin died, before all this, like I felt it then, but I feel it so much more now because, I think that like I needed you, at different times in my life, when my mom passed away and I didn't, I needed that. I needed you and, other times too. And I think that God, in spite of all of it, he like knew what he was doing, whether like the Reuben thing, God putting Reuben in your life at the exact moment you needed it, and I think that I look back on so many different incidences and conversations. And I know that without a doubt, God had you in my life to remind me of stuff, remind me of faith, remind me of him, remind me of like, just, who I am and but the encouragement and all that, it really has meant the world to me. And I can't, like I said, I'm not very good at explaining it, but you get the idea.
I do. You can just say, I love you.
Very much. And I think that, I want it. It's like, it's become more and more. I think, I did Tony Foster's brother, I've known him pretty much my whole life as far as, come through you. And he, I'm doing his brother's funeral, being a part of his brother's funeral. The man's 57 years old and he died. And I'm just so like that really affects you. And you start to think, it's like I'm 51 and, life, I think there's two sides of it. Like if people ask me, I'll say, I'm going to live to be 90, I have 40 more years or whatever. That's what I'll say, because there's a part of me that believes that. Like because I don't want to just give up on time, and I want to be able to like continue doing stuff. I want to live. And then on the other part though, I think that God puts those events in your life because it reminds you of how short life is. life is super short. And,
It is.
I think about like how much time I spent with like grandma, but yet it's been how many ever years since she passed away. And it just shows that life is so short, and I think
I think she died November 10 years ago in 2013.
yeah. Wow. I didn't, I forget those.
Yeah, 10 years.
But you just you realize that those, like those people in your life are super important, and
Yes.
and anyway, and that one thing that there's some of these funerals you attend, they don't want you to talk. I'm not talking about necessarily this funeral, but I'm saying in general, where they don't want you to talk too much about God because they weren't sure of their beliefs.
Oh, that's sad, isn't it?
It really is. And yet I think about it's like, we're not going to have that discussion, when you die. We're not going to have this discussion about, and nor did we have this discussion really when any in our family die. We're not saying it. And I love that. I love that that's you're leaving. I mean, not one of your grandkids, not one, I promise you, is going to be going, well, I wonder if she is a Christian or not. That's not going to be a subject. We're not going to be sitting at funeral going, I wonder if we should talk about God or not.
Well, you hear people, you hear especially older generations, it'll say, oh, I never did. Oh, I was baptized when I was 10, but I never go to church. But, it's not about the baptism.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that the baptism in our belief is a testimony of your salvation. It's not your salvation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people in the older generation, oh, yeah, I was baptized at a Brush Arbor revival. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, you were baptized, but were you saved?
Yeah.
Did you, ask Jesus to be your savior? And, a lot of people that aren't saved, they're in for a shock if they've not been saved, if they're just relying on their baptism.
Yeah.
But you know what? All said and everything we said, anybody listening to this, even one less was started with the best intentions.
Yes.
We wanted to do this for the exact purpose of giving alternatives to end in your life. If someone's listening to this and they're thinking about suicide, there is so much more. Your life is not over. And I want them to know that in families, get into a good counseling, reach out to your friends, they're waiting for you to reach out to them because of the delicacy of a suicide.
Yeah.
But all you have to do is reach out to them and say, you know what? I need a hug.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to pray for me. Anyway, I just wanted to say that in my parting words.
Well, and I'll add on to that. It's like, the best, if you're listening to this and you're feeling those ways, I mean, you have two people right here. There's more than two, but you have two people right here that would be love to hear from you. Would absolutely like you can, you like Debbie, you're one of the most, you're very easy to talk to. So you would be very available. There's no excuse for having somebody to talk to. You would be happy to talk to them, and so would I. And I think that,
But we've said, and we'll say again too, though, we're neither one professionals.
Right.
All we can do is tell you our experiences and tell you why it's important to make a different choice.
Mm-hmm.
Your family can't be the only reason, but it is a big reason.
Yeah.
But your life is not over. The disappointment you're going through right now, don't think of a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those things will get better.
I keep saying it's a season. I mean, I'm sure you could say the same things. Like, how many seasons did you go through where you were just like very depressed or very upset or very mad? And those seasons go away. So they go away, and they go away a lot quicker than you think,
You do.
And
I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot of instances, not just, with losing my sons, losing my first husband, my best breast cancer. I've gone through those seasons too. There's been a lot of times that I won't even pretend to understand the amount of depression someone has. I've not experienced that depression. Yes, I've been sad. Yes, I've been depressed for a moment or whatever, but not to the level that I know some suffer with. Mm-hmm. And, there's so much available now to help you through that and help someone through that. So.
Well, we thank you guys for tuning in. Debbie, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me, and I appreciate it. And if you guys, again, we want to encourage you guys to go to our website, evenoneless.com. Follow this podcast. That's a great way at Positively Undefeated. Also through the website, and I know it's a work in progress, but we're trying to make it available where you can contact Debbie and send her an email and be able to ask questions if you or anything. So we're working on those type of things, but I think it starts with just reaching out. Facebook's a great place to reach out to our organization. And so thank you guys for tuning in. And Debbie, I appreciate you and love you.
All right. Y'all be sure and watch for our February event that's coming up February 24th.
Yeah, February 24th in Midland. I'm excited about that. So you guys have a great day. Love you.
Love you too.
Thank you for listening to Positively Undefeated. If there was something in this show that resonated with you, please share the show with your community. If you want this show delivered each Monday morning to your podcast app of choice, please subscribe or follow. And if you'd like to get a hold of Burl, please do so by going to burlstricker.com/contact.